Alright, so this video is a bit outside of my regular series over PaperZD. I will record it for the series later. However, I'm just going to drop this because there has been a fair bit of talk and someone was asking me about it. So, this topic, of course, is going to be about creating a more standard animation blueprint that can be adopted by many different sprites instead of doing the traditional rigging up of a whole animation blueprint for a individual character. Um, Now, this is doable if you have a few characters. You could do just the manual rigging, and that's okay. But as soon as you start to add double or triple digits, then we have exponentially more work and debugging to do. Now, I will note right now, it can be a little better for more complicated sprite sheets to still rig them. This generic animation blueprint works really well with basic uh, sprites and animation sets, and I haven't tested it, but I do have ideas how it could be utilized with more complex sprites. So there is potential for this generic one to become a pretty all-encompassing animation blueprint. However, we're not going to go over that. We're just going to implement the most basic form. So to start, if you've never worked with parent and children blueprint classes, I would recommend you watch something about that. I have my own video, and I don't know if I already mentioned this. I don't think I have. If you don't know anything about PaperZD, I would recommend you start on my series where I take apart, we pick into all of the parts of PaperZD as well as Unreal Engine, and it's very useful. So I would recommend you start there. Quick over overview of parent and children blueprint classes. I have my character base. This is the parent of all characters, whether player or enemy. It doesn't matter. They are a child in some way of this character base. And why that's nice is to create a child, you right click child blueprint. Why that's nice, all of them will adopt and inherit everything this blueprint has. All of the camera positions, any different components like a health component, very specific movement things or camera. Like I do certain camera tricks to make it look nicer. All of that will be passed down onto any character that is a child of this. And I do it a little bit more separated by creating two children directly of this, one called enemy, one called player, and from there all of my enemies come from this guy, all my players come from here, further creating that separation where I can have enemy specific stats and they will all be adopted if I add it into here, and any player specific type of stats or information. Now, why is this important? Because we're going to need some type of way to save these animations. So traditionally within PaperZD, you would have your animation blueprint and an animation source. Once again, I would recommend you watch my entire series. I still will comment on here. An animation source, we have the ability to add animation sequences, which are made of a flip book. And then we have these different notify tracks. And these are all very powerful and very useful. But we need to now access this outside of the traditional way. So normally when you make a animation, pop back into here, an animation blueprint, you would have to pick a source, and this gives you direct access to each of these, which then in turn allows you to, for instance, play bow attack. I will only be able to access the adventurer's sequences and none other, which is kind of nice. But it's limiting if we want to have one animation blueprint be able to play everything. So there's a few ways to do this, and this is the method that I have chosen. And let's go back. All right, back into the parent character class. So my character base. We're going to add in a variable. It's going to be called animap. Now it's going to have an enumerator, and that enumerator will hop in here. I have a basic, it's just my folder, it's called animBP base. You can call it like generic animation blueprint. Inside of here, we've right-clicked blueprint enumeration. We've added an enumerator called anim sequence enum. This is going to be the most basic types of animations that a fair is needed to run an animation. We have none do have this: idle, run, attack, fall, hit, death, and jump. All of those, if we have those, we will be able to do the basic functions of a character or an enemy. So that will be the type, the pin type, and then on the value, we are going to do a PaperZD anim. Come on, anim sequence. Very specific. We want the PaperZD anim sequence as an object reference. We do not want the PaperZD anim sequence flipbook. We want the anim sequence. The difference between these two, as I pointed out a second ago within this character's animation source. So an animation sequence, once you add and create a new animation sequence, it makes a folder for you automatically that creates an animation sequence. If we open that, it'll take me to this here within the source. That also will contain any type of notifies. And notifies, if you don't know, allow us to do things like hitboxes, projectiles, play sounds, and such. Now, if we don't specifically use the sequence, but instead do the sequence flipbook, it is only accessing the visibly played flipbook. So it's essentially PaperZD's form of a flipbook. And we want to be able to utilize notify still. So it has to be the PaperZD anim sequence, very, very specifically. Now that we have that map, we can add in elements here into the default value. We can add in all of the idle, run, attack, fall, hit, death, jump. The reason we have none is it gives us the ability to add one in and then select the next one. If you don't do that, you can't. Unreal will struggle a little bit because you can't have duplicate keys, so it will make it a little bit difficult to try to add in more map keys. So we have the none there to do that for us. Perfect. Now, the great thing is, because this is in the highest parent class, this whole thing, the map with all of the default values already added in, will be added directly to any character that is derived from that parent class. So if I go into, for example, and I'm gonna just play real quick. This is the character. You see he's not playing any animations. That's because he's just the idle. He's not rigged up yet, but he will be. So we're gonna use that guy. We can ignore this error because he's not rigged up yet. We'll close out of here. That is my cultist, assassin cultist. We'll go into his blueprint. And now, because this is a child of the enemy character base that I have, which is a child of the character base, we'll be able to search in anim map, and boom, we see it's added in there automatically for us as long as we have compiled. And now we can just add in the animation sequences. Reminder, if you haven't made the source for your character and gone through and added each sequence and added each flipbook, you would need to do that here to be able to see these pull up. So I can search up assassin, idle assassin, run assassin, attack assassin. Okay, hit, death, and finally jump. Perfect. Compile, and now we have within our character, so within this character, you should have made a character class, done all the proper adding in of the sprites and such. If you don't know any of this, I would once again recommend go watch the series. I'm not going to cover how to do that, but it is covered there. So that character will now contain within it a way to access all of these basic animations. So now we can hop directly into actually making that animation blueprint. So we'll go back to my folder, and this is where we're going to add in the AnimBP base, or just a generic AnimBP, whatever name you'd like. We can right click, PaperZD. Reminder, to make an AnimBP, you need a source. So we see here I have an anim source base. Within here, technically, you could skip those. No, I'm not going to say that. So there's a few things we could do here. We see I've added in a base source. It's just empty. You need something in here, and I will explain in a minute. So make sure you have at least an empty animation sequence in here. You could, in theory, add in all of your characters' animation sequences into this one animation source, and it would let you be able to see them all here. And if that's how you like to do stuff, then that could work. I prefer to have them separated based off of all of the sources, based off of the character within their own folder. That way we can see everything. Oh, hello, I just had a cat hop on me. One sec. That way I can add in and focus on the character without having to search up. But you could have good naming conventions, and that might work for you. Reminder again, make sure there's something in here. Okay. I guess I can close this one too. All right, so we will then add in, once you have made a anim source space, we can then right click, PaperZD, AnimBP, and now pick that source. Okay, upon doing that, we will now access the event graph and perform a bit of casts. These are going to be important for getting our data out of our characters. So the first thing we need to do is event on initiate. If you don't see that, it's probably an override. Get owning actor, cast the character base, and then promote the as character base to a this is casting, to remember, to your ultimate, just the parent, the highest parent class. Make that a variable, and I will explain a little bit more about this, why we're casting just to the parent class. This is really nice. We don't have to cast to individual characters. We're trying to avoid that, because that's where things get wildly complex. If we have to cast to each individual character based off of what characters being possessed and utilized, so we could say ASSA. Okay, that was too. We could try to do all of the different casts, but if we have tons of characters, once again, this is going to make a lot of code. So bear with me. This is another really nice part about inheritance. If you don't already understand parent and children blueprint classes, you're just going to have to go with this. Unreal will handle some of this backend, and we'll see a little bit more in a second. We need to get our player controller, and we need to promote that cast to a variable. And then this is for AI related things. It's not important right now, but if you do, you can do that. Then finally, we need a variable as that enumerator that we made earlier. Okay, perfect. So that will be the event graph. Now within the actual animation graph, this is how I do things within my series. I've gone over why I separate my state machines based off of their movement modes. I just prefer it. It's two very distinct types of motion. You have everything within air and everything on ground, and I just prefer it like that. So the way I've done it is as character base. We get the movement mode. If the movement mode is walking, we'll go into the locomotion state machine. If it's falling, we'll do airborne. And a really nice part about this too is we can utilize the none to play a death animation. Now, what are both of these? All right, this is going to be how we're going to play our animations. So I've created a function here called select animation from map. I'm actually going to go back to the event graph to demonstrate some stuff. If you don't know what functions are, very quick You can add a function, you can add inputs and outputs of anything. This allows us to pass information in, do some computations, run some code, and then pass outputs out. Now, there's two types of functions. There's a regular function, and then there's a pure function. This has execute pins, this does not. If I turn it to a pure, it will then not have execute pins. Now, you got to be careful with these. Typically, pure functions are just going to be for mathematical computations and what we're about to do. So, select animation from map. We can open that up, and we see that I have an input of that same key. The key is my animation sequence enum. The output is a PaperZD animation sequence. We're getting the character base. We're getting anim map. We're finding from that key, and then we're passing out a sequence. Now, this might be confusing because you might think, oh, how does that work where this variable is just a cast to the character base, which logic would state that, oh, we're casting to this. There's nothing in here. All of these are empty, right? Like that does make sense. And if that's what you think, you're not wrong. However, the way Unreal will handle it in the back end is actually when we start a world, start up a game, any characters spawned in as their actors, Unreal will handle, because it's a child of the character base, it will just automatically it'll just take from character base to this to the assassin cultist's own PaperZD character. Like it's cool. It's just one of the useful things about parent and children classes. So this will automatically handle it all for us, and we don't have to do those individual casts. Instead, it'll take care of it. So now if this entire instance, when sorry, I'm this is no, it's been a while since I've explained higher end stuff. So when a game starts, it's going to any character that is using the animation blueprint base as an instance in which they are running their own animations, they will be able to get their own information out of it, essentially. If you don't understand, if that was all just really confusing, I understand. That was a horrible explanation. But just know that this will work, and it'll be beautiful, and you'll love it. So this is going to, once again, be a pure function as well. Now we can add that in. What's this play sequence? If you were to pull off of here and type in play sequence, you won't get anything. The creator of PaperZD, maybe he could add this, maybe not. It doesn't really matter. What this is if we go into a basic character, this right here, play Bow Adventurer. We're getting an animation, and we're getting putting it into the output, and then that's what's being rendered. There is no play sequence. You have to have an actual animation sequence that's played. But that only comes from, remember, sorry, I'm jumping around a bunch. It only comes from things contained within the animation source that you use to make your animation blueprint. We added one thing in, fortunately, called base. So we can play base. Perfect. Now, what good does that do us? Not much. We can't connect anything. We can, however, expose the animation sequence, and just like that, we now have a play sequence node, which we can connect to and now play anything from our enumerator. If we wanted to play fall for some reason, when our character movement mode is equal to none, it would do so. In this case, though, it will be death. So when the character dies, I will play death. I would recommend that you just copy this right now, or at least copy the play sequence, so you don't have to play base and expose that every time. Within locomotion, I will just cover this really simply. Idle running, the way I have it set up, character base, we get the character's movement mode. This is again another great thing about parent classes. We can still cast that parent class, and it will get the individual character's movement mode because it's its own instance. Whenever that's not equal to 0, it means it's moving, so we can play the run sequence. Whenever it's false that it's not equal to 0, it would be idling. It's a little backwards. This is going to be important. You might not have an attacking node yet, but this is an attacking jump. Playing our attack. Now, what's really important here is transitions. So a traditional transition, typically you would do a time remaining. Sorry, we're going to open up I should have just left these open. Okay, so if I do my bow attack with my regular character, after the animation is done, time remaining equal to 0, it will transition out of that, right? That's pretty basic. This time remaining is tied directly to the bow sequence. It gets its length, so then we can know when it's equal to 0. We don't have that, right? We don't have a single animation sequence. We have many. We have as many as characters that we have implemented. So we can actually do something else. We can get the player. Now, this player is not a player character. Think of it like a video player. It's what's playing the animation. We're going to get the playback progress. If we hover over, we see obtain the progress ranging from 0 to 1, 0 being the start, 1 being the end. When that's equal to 1, that means the animation will have completed, and therefore we are done and we can transition out of it. So that's a really important part of this whole standardized system, is there has to be a way to transition, and that can really stop you up if you don't have that. So this is big. Get player, playback, progress. And there's a few things you can do with player, so you can tinker around with it. And then I will still show within my airborne. Very simple. Remember, this is for simple characters for now, with the potential to add more complexity. Character base movement mode. If the z velocity is less than 0, it means you're falling. If it's not, then it means you're in the air. You're jumping. This is how I've set it up. So. Okay, perfect. Final thing we need to do is actually add this to our character. We need to add our animation blueprint to the character so it will play its animations. And as long as you've done all of this, we can search up anim instance class. And that's where we will select that base play. And we see now that character is playing its animations. Its AI is completely broke, so it'll just stop moving. But we can see this guy's kind of running around too, and he implements the same one. My player character doesn't, because it is more complex right now, and there's a little bit more spaghetti code involved, so it doesn't properly implement yet. But it works great for AIs that are very simple and for characters that are very simple. So we can try to run away from him real quick. There we go. Keep following me. Very great. Gets the opportunity to attack. It plays its attack animation. And that was all done in a standardized pipeline and can be added to any characters. So I have several. We have a light bandit, heavy bandit, 4 different cultists. You can just add in new characters, add in their sources, deal with all their flipbooks, deal with everything, and then just utilize the animation blueprint base, and you'll have a very quick pipeline to put out new characters. So it's kind of long, but the video is kind of long. Sorry. I hope it makes sense. I hope this is beneficial, and let me know what you think if you have any questions.